welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. And this is an awesome day. We are going to be covering what makes a good or bad venture capitalist 2.0. This is sort of part of a series. You can never have too many conversations when it's coming to raising money and making things happen with this entrepreneur space. I'm really excited. We got some amazing luminaries here. So we got Eugene, who is an amazing podcaster himself. And so just to make me feel better, he didn't put his podcasting gear and set up here. And so anyway, that's awesome. He's a serial intra and entrepreneurial co-founder and CEO of Your Coach Health and entrepreneur and resident at the PHS Fund. We also have Tom Kluz, and he's running a corporate venture fund. He's doing technology venture capital and growth investor. We got Matt Douglas, founder and CEO, building companies that transform enterprises, digitize and silent, focus on using AI to deliver business outcomes, avid gym rat and mentor. You can't be empowered unless you empower others. I love that one. And Michael Gorton, 15X, not 30X, but 15X entrepreneur, visionary, CEO, Teledoc founder, innovation disruption speaker, EY Entrepreneur of the Year, award-winning author, adventure, telemedicine industry founder. And he really builds world-changing ideas, companies. And Dr. Gupta, co-founder and CEO at Tempo Health, and he's hiring right now. So that's a good thing. Emergency physician, medical information infamous, and BCG alum. All right, so that was great. We're ready to go and have a few questions, but I'd like, before we start, each of you, if you could just give us like a 1-minute quick intro, because I'm sure I didn't do you justice. So begin.
All right, we'll go in the order that you introduced. Hopefully everybody remembers. So I'm Eugene Borukhovich, and I kind of self-described as either a recovering executive or recovering entrepreneur, but I'm always recovering from something, right? Been in healthcare health tech 20 odd years. And Michael, you are the boss, right? You're the podcaster. So
awesome. Next, let's just go with Tom. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. My name is Tom Kluz, growth equity kind of venture capital investor. I've been doing corporate venture now for the last 10 years, but originally started on the financial venture capital side. Pleasure to meet everyone.
All right, Dr. Gupta.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Anurag Gupta. I've been in healthcare for over 20 years, and I've always seen all the gaps in healthcare and where patients kind of fall through the cracks in the system. I experienced this personally with my grandfather as he was aging into his upper 80s and younger 90s. And just the confluence of trying to manage his caregiving needs as well as his clinical needs was my inspiration for starting Tempo Health. We are a virtual wraparound care model for dementia. You can think of us as a wedding planner, navigating the journey of dementia for the family and caregivers, all the way from pre-diagnosis through the end of life. And just excited to be here and share stories with everyone.
Matthew Douglas.
Hey, I'm Matt Douglas. I am a prior chief enterprise architect of the largest major health system in Virginia, DC, and North Carolina. Went through the pandemic, created a bunch of technology, created some patents while I was doing that, chief enterprise architect of that major health system. Also a 20-year cloud strategist and evangelist, done 20 to 100 to 200 cloud strategies for healthcares, from the big guys, from the largest health systems, like literally the top four. I helped build their cloud strategies. Sit on the board of Zscaler, sit on the board of Microsoft Health Advisory, Juniper Health Advisory, like every one of them, out there for health advisory and technology. Now I own my own 2 companies, and have exited prior with my first company back in '97 during the startup.com boom. I was a provider and e-commerce hoster and all kinds. I did like 12 different businesses. So really excited to talk about this today.
Michael.
I wrote a book on this topic called Broken Handoff. It's actually this one right here. mirror image, hard. But, in the beginning, I started thinking about why do entrepreneurs all call venture capital vultures? And so in the beginning, it was sort of a negative book, but it ended up becoming a very positive book because I brought a VC in, I brought a human capital person in, and we figured out, what are the problems and how do you fix them?
Awesome. So where do we start? You guys, what do we want to dig deep into? Anyone have a personal experience, anything they want to share as we go around?
Can I just make a quick comment to Michael? Yeah, I've heard the vulture piece. I don't know if it matters which industry, which business it is, right? There's just great people and there's shitty people, right? And so like really, right? I mean, VCs are VCs. It's a job, it's a passion, and there are assholes. And I don't know if we need to be PG here or not, but they're assholes, and then there's great people that you want to just build shit with, right? So I don't know, just a quick comment on it.
Just to let you know, when I publish, I do say that it's not appropriate for kids, so it's fine. We can use explicitives,
all right.
but it doesn't need to be explicit at each other. Anyway, I'll stop there. Go ahead.
I'm not a Gary Vaynerchuk, so it's not every other word, but all right, cool.
So I think that stems from a tide of Shark Tank. I think Shark Tank really gave spotlight to the asshole versus the really cool enabler, like the Damon Dash, as opposed to Kevin O'Donnell, to like Mark Cuban. It's really showed you the personalities of the VC and where are you wanting to take your business. Were you willing to go with a guy who was a jerk that really was truthful with you, or did you want to go with the softer side of it? And now we're starting to see the good parts of Shark Tank. Like those guys who were jerks, they really took companies and made them amazing companies and made connections for people. They may be jerks up front, but in the end, they're investing. So I think that became very clear. Like, who do you want to do business with and where do you want to go?
I think one of the things that I realized while researching and writing that book was, in the end, it's all about communication. And there are differences between the general makeup of an entrepreneur and the general makeup of VC. So VCs tend to be the smartest people in the room. They have the Wharton MBAs and Harvard MBAs. And entrepreneurs tend to be much more of the sort of rugged, I could do anything, throw anything at me, but they don't necessarily have the MIT degree. And when you take people that are very different but super smart and put them in the room and they're not the same kind of smart, there's friction. And fixing the problem really comes down to understanding what creates that friction and how to get rid of it.
So I'm a podcast host, so I'm gonna jump in, guys, because I just want to adding. But if I'm taking up too much time, Michael, it's for you, right? I'm also want to make this kind of similar comment on the communication. At the end of the day, it's a relationship, right? And it's a relationship that in many cases you meet someone years ago. In some cases you jump on the first call for whether it's a virtual coffee or real coffee. And part of it is a gut, like, hey, I can do work with this person. I can grab a drink and walk in the park, right, and talk about some of the challenges we have. And so I think part of that is just like, can you really get along with that person? Can you trust that person, right? And trust is built over time, of course, but there's a gut feel to it. And I think finding that fine line between, do you over communicate, do you under communicate? I think that we're all always learning as we get to know each other as individuals, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think I've been in venture now for about 10, 15 years, right? I haven't seen, Michael, it'd be interesting to kind of get your kind of take and everybody else's take on this, but it feels like venture capital and what qualifies as venture capital, like you just kind of spelled it out. It's someone with a Wharton MBA or somebody with investment banking experience. But initially, venture capitalists were all former entrepreneurs. They were all former engineers who worked in tech and, had a pot of money and wanted to share the wealth. And now it has turned into kind of this kind of Shark Tank mentality. And I would say the number of venture capitalists has grown, but the number of VC or the number of entrepreneurs has grown disproportionately to the number of venture capitalists, right? So it'd be kind of interesting to get your take on, admittedly, like is so the Shark Tank era, right? I think that's one thing, but then the evolution of the industry, right? Like what's happened in the last, call it 20, 30, 40 years that's kind of bridged that gap, right? I could have, if you talk to folks from, that did venture capital in sort of the 80s, the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, they felt like there was a purist mentality to the industry, and there was a way of operating that just isn't being operated at the same level today. So it'd be interesting to kind of get your thoughts on, and I didn't read your book, unfortunately, but did your book kind of cover the sort of longitudinal nature of the industry?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I realized, and again, this goes back to communication, is that who the VC reports to is their LPs, and who the entrepreneur reports to is whatever their goal or task is. And for us, there is no failure. But in the VC world, 30% success, 70% failure is about the average. And if you think about this kind of situation, so what kind of person has the credentials, the business model, the tools to get through VC due diligence? It's the best of the best, right? And once we get through it, if we fall in that category of the 70%, it's an unmitigated failure for us. For the VC, it is, we've got these 3 companies that are doing really well. We expect one of them to be 100x, and the model. But for the VC, it's their lifeblood, their friends and family money. It's everything all put into this deal, and failure is just not an option. And I think one of the things, Tom, that we really want to do is we want to figure out, how do we take that 70% failure rate and turn it into a 60 and then a 50? What are the things that we can all do together, that is the entrepreneurs and the VCs, so that we can say, okay, how do we tweak this 7th one up and the 6th one up? And that's one of the things we talked about in the book is, and again, I think Eugene sort of nailed it. It's all about communication. It's all about the interactions. And if we can help people understand on the front end, how do we do this? Then we find a pathway to success.
Look, I'll just use. Sorry, Dr. Gupta, go ahead, please.
I'm just gonna piggyback off of that comment, because it really struck a chord with me as an entrepreneur and someone who's a little bit more early stage. I definitely felt that pressure that you're talking about, Michael, which was, this is my company. I have all the eggs in one basket here, and it's just so important to me, the mission, the team, and everything. And I remember having a very candid conversation with one of my lead investors about 1.5 years ago, where I was really, really interested in making kind of a major pivot with where we were, and this was in a phase where we were seeing growth, we were getting traction, but I saw a much stronger and better opportunity to grow, expand, and so forth. And I was very anxious kind of going into that conversation with my VC, because I wasn't sure how they were going to react to this idea. And he was amazing, and he just basically told me, he's like, look, like, I invested in you because of your insights, your ability, and your knowledge, and like, if this is where you personally think the business should go, absolutely you should take that chance. And I kind of told him, I was like, well, based on where we are, if we make this big pivot, we're either going to go to the moon, or we're gonna sink and crash. And I can't tell you what the odds are, but my gut is telling me to go there. And he just kind of smiled, and he was like, well, that's the point of VC. I don't need 100% of my companies to be successful. But I definitely want every one of my companies to take that shot when they see it. And then he kind of went in and said one of the things that he's seen through his 20-some years of investing is that a lot of the companies that end up failing after that seed stage is the ones that stop taking big bets. So I thought that was really interesting. And, for us, is that bet has been paying off. We're like just entering this kind of hyper growth phase right now. And so I'm glad he gave me that support and confidence to make that bet.
I took some time to think about this, like beforehand. It's like, what, I talked to a couple of my partners that are, enterprise, they've exited, started businesses. This latest one, I'm a senior VP of Zoom, and I just got some amazing. The first CIO of Tesla is part of my crew. So it's all about like who you surround yourself with as an entrepreneur for me. And, that's at friends. My friends are cool. My friends have done big things. So that's, and then when we create a new technology, I want to do things not just better. I'm creating a new category, first off. There's no other technology like what I do. So I get to choose. So I get to choose who I want to go with. So I've sat with Sequoia Capital for Equinix on their board. I stood on Wall Street convincing people to invest in Equinix, and it worked. I became friends with Sequoia Capital, all these different VCs. So it's creating friends, lots of really cool friends, and creating cool technology. But so my choice is, who do I want as a VC? They have to believe in my management team, everything from the vision, the ability to build an efficient operation, believe in the product. They immediately have to understand the true, genuine value logically, not just hypothetically. They say, pitch it to a baby. A baby has to understand it. Absolutely. You have to be able to, within seconds, articulate exactly what your product does and be able to teach it to a kindergartner. If they don't understand what technology is. And my friends, they understand what technology is. They're just like, okay. And then is able to grow your business. My biggest thing is, who's your network and where are you going to take me? Because I got a network and I can take this to market myself, or I can IPO it myself, but I'm looking for somebody as a venture capitalist that can help join me in the pursuit of getting X over. So let's look at Zscaler's acquisition of Avalar. Avalar raised $250 million of seed funding, exited in 1 year for $310 million with zero revenue. That's technology. That's today's technology, and it's hot. Flow security, $250 million in cash they got within 1 year, $13 million in seed funding. They had revenue though. They got revenue a little bit. So it's hot. That's like 20x in 1 year. That's where the market's going, being unicorns, getting funding, you got to be different. And then find the guy that believes in your vision.
But also, it's funny. I just saw something on Instagram. There's an inventor, and I'm very much. To me, it's about solving a problem, and I always struggle with the fact where you were talking like a tech push, inventing something, and then finding a market for it. So that just me. I kind of start always. And I saw something on Instagram where there's a guy that invented a bicycle with squares instead of
yeah, that was pretty cool.
It's cool, but my comment is, what problem are they trying to solve, right? So it's cool. It's going to get virality. But is it a sustainable business? Is it not, right?
It's a one-off niche business for one guy out of his friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with that, when I talk to a lot of new entrepreneurs, I always tell them, like, you have to absolutely just breathe and live and even bleed your mission. And if you're not absolutely obsessed with it, it's going to be a very, very tough journey, right? Because you've got to convince yourself to spend time on this, your family members, you got to convince your early employees, you got to convince investors to invest in you. And if you're not absolutely driven and obsessed with solving that problem, I think you're just getting punched too many times in the face every day as an entrepreneur to outlive that. So I think to your example of like a bicycle with square wheels, like how do you remain passionate about that? When you get that first door slammed in your face, are you gonna figure out the tunnel underneath or a trampoline to jump over it or whatever crazy thing you're gonna do to overcome that obstacle?
Also, maybe just
One of the questions that the VCs ask us all the time is, if this was such a great idea, then, I'll take the Teledoc example because it's one everybody recognizes. But if it was such a great idea, then United Healthcare or Blue Cross or one of the big companies would do it. And I'll give you a really good example of why they didn't. When we first started the company, Dr. Brooks and I went to the Board of Medical Examiners, told them, with great passion, how telemedicine was going to change the world. And the Board of Medical Examiners listened to us politely. And then they said, if you build this, you will go to prison. And so now imagine an executive from United Healthcare sitting in that meeting. What would they have done? They would have said, okay, we're done. It takes the entrepreneurs who are willing to say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but let's figure this out. Let's get through this problem. And in my particular case, when we went to that Board of Medical Examiners, it was me and two of my founding doctors. And one of them, I was never able to clean up off the floor. He just said, I'm done. I'm not risking my license. The other one, it took a little while. And together we built, this engine that became Teledoc. But solving the harder problems, I think Matthew kind of nailed it when if you think about, you got to surround yourself with people who believe in it, who know how to get it done, who know how to move forward, no matter what they throw at you.
Well, Michael, I think you're doing something right now with Phantom Space. Do you want to share a little? I don't mean to do a plug about that, but come on, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it was really cool. You got to interview one of the guys who walked on the moon and one of the guys who founded SpaceX a couple days ago. So there's a niche in space launch right now, and that is the smaller rockets that cost less to get up. And Phantom has taken the guys who created the Falcon rocket for SpaceX, put them all together in a room and said, let's solve this problem of low Earth orbit rockets. And I think, as Jim Cantrell, the founder of Phantom Space, says, we want to be the Henry Ford of space. So kind of a cool concept.
It's literally rocket science, right?
Literally.
I saw it last night. Actually, I live in Daytona, Port Orange area. So literally on the water. So last night when they launched the rocket, I got this cool picture of it like going across. And it's like, that is so cool. And I sent it to he works for me, the first CIO of Tesla. I was like, check that out. Like, that's your ex-employer doing some cool stuff. He's like, yeah, I don't like it still. I was like, whatever, dude. But it was cool. Being able to see innovation at your front door is really neat.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Tom, what do we need to do to inspire you and how I know making money is one of the primary metrics, but what as entrepreneurs, what is it that you like to hear?
Well, I'm just blown away by the lower orbit rockets. I don't know much about that space, but I think for me, I think being a corporate, I think, Matthew, you mentioned some of the Z-Scale IPO and some of the success there and some of the investors around the table. I think it's really about, having sort of unrivaled knowledge about technology expertise. I think coming from the corporate side, we will probably do investments in things that other people don't quite understand because we have a little bit of unique knowledge about a particular sector. I'm a bit of a generalist these days, so I spend a lot of time in healthcare. I was an investor in InTouch years ago, which I know you know well, just given the Teledoc acquisition. So I'm just having fun right now. I think we're spending a lot of time in areas that we feel that we can add some operational knowledge to. So as a CVC, we like to roll up our sleeves and get down to business. So we're not trying to just make a financial return. I think it's about strategic as well as financial. I think I'm a big believer in no margin, no mission, but generally I kind of turn it back over to the group here. In terms of, you mentioned, Michael, the concept of limited partners putting some pressure on the investors. I think traditional financial VCs are spending, a lot of time trying to deploy their capital as quickly as possible to try to raise a new fund, right? And so the way that they do that is demonstrate that their last fund is making money. Guys like me are spending most of my time, and I'm generalizing here, and I don't mean to generalize, but guys like me are spending most of my time convincing my limited partner, my mothership, that we're adding strategic value to them and to the companies we back. So it'd be interesting to kind of get everybody's thoughts on, call it the intricacies between CVCs and financial, and if there's, is there a difference in terms of schema between those types of investors, and are they valuable to entrepreneurs?
Can I turn the question around on you, Tom, real quick before I just jump in? I think, every CVC is different and the mandate is different, right? I used to be in big pharma. We did very early, small, kind of safe checks, right? And part of it was the job was to really understand what's happening in the space versus any strategic or real, financial ROI, which we can probably talk for an hour if that works or not, but a different story, right? So what is your mandate a bit, right? And how do you work with the entrepreneurs? Because again, the strategy you deploy is based on the mandate.
Yeah. Well, my specific mandate is we try to leverage my company's expertise, which is in the material space. So we have knowledge around large-scale manufacturing, polymerization, ceramic expertise, and we also are able to we have expertise in high volume precision engineering, and we're looking for ways to creatively apply some of that expertise to enable or empower high growth venture businesses. So we're not looking to acquire the businesses we invest in. We're looking for co-creation opportunities, co-development opportunities, and possible revenue streams back to the mothership. So we're investing in IoT, AI, medical space as well. We have a small medical business, and we're looking to just learn about the medical industry. It's such a different space than most industries, and so we just don't understand how the value chain operates. And so I think our investments in that space are a bit more about learning about how the industry works, who the key players are, and possibly kind of go back to the drawing board and say, all right, where else do we grow our revenue streams in the space?
So it's interesting. Bring it back. It keeps scrolling to what makes it good. Sorry, Matthew. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just kind of, just as you were describing this, what makes a good or bad venture capitalist 2.0 scrolling, right? And I think as, depending which stage you're at as a company, as a startup, but also depending on where you are in the food chain from a investor perspective, what stages you invest, I think what makes a good or bad venture capitalist differs. Now, ultimately, I think the foundational line is just being a good human being, right? I'm going to keep bringing this back. But I think also, Dr. Gupta, you told the story. I don't know how far you were into it, because if you had an asshole that only worried about the return in to raise the next fund versus looking at somebody who sees your vision, who builds it with you, you wouldn't been talking about what you just talked about before, right? Now, if I'm gonna put my old CVC, but later down the line, like I want a proven market fit. I want it to be strategic because it can complement or fit a gap in an asset that I may not have, or there's a danger of not being in that market, right? And you're going to drive different things with entrepreneurs. It's just the nature of the beast, and follow the money and follow the component of the industry and the time.
So So I want to call out, like, so one of my first experiences with, big scale venture capital and things like that, I was at Smithfield Foods as the chief. They had moved me from the CTO, chief enterprise architect, to innovation. So I flew out to Silicon Valley to plug and play. What an amazing experience! Plug and play. I'm going to keep endorsing him because it was really opened my eyes to how we work together. And I was part of, going to acquire technology for Smithfield Foods, and, being a part of the trying to acquire Beyond Meats before Tyson was pretty cool. Having that ability to do that and to try to convince the board of a big major company that, hey, normal protein is not the way to go with this alternative meat source was the biggest mission. It wasn't they gave me money, but it was like convincing my board and convincing all these people that their traditional product wasn't sustainable. You see how that turned out. You know what I mean? Beyond Meats ended up going to Tyson, and they ended up getting like $3 billion within a short period of time, where they bought themselves back. So as a VC, working with Sequoia and all these other ones, I really like what Tom said. Working with a company called Snowhawk, it's another VC, and a friend of mine, Sarah from Equinix, is on the board of partners. They only invest in physical structural businesses, nothing really virtual, nothing in space, kind of throwing that out there. And then Tom, like you guys, invest in specific types of businesses. Plug and play for those guys that there's a fit there for everyone. There's always a fit for the VC, I'm finding. I like to play in the space of my ecosystem of what I do is I'm tired of being vertical specific. I want to cover everything. I want to be able to sell to your grandmom or to the chief medical officer or that kind of stuff. That's a maturity era. It's cool. Niches are cool. Like, I really focused on medical for a long time because just all my friends are chief medical officers because of being in that space, and things like that. And that telehealth, that's really cool. I got to pitch that, like to Epic and all those kind of things. Really revolutionized the way we do healthcare. So being that front runner is really, really important, I think. If you really want to invest in passion, for me, it's really doing something innovative. You really got to believe in it, and you've created a new vertical. A lot of people waste a lot of time with things that have already been done. That's all good. Thanks.
One of the things that I think most of us know, but sometimes there isn't a whole lot of collective wisdom, and that is we learn from our mistakes. And entrepreneurs, we make a lot of mistakes. And I'll give you a little anecdote. This is funny, but it's also sad. That in one of the companies I was building, they send this brand new, freshly graduated Wharton scholar who's very, very smart. But all he wants us to do is do spreadsheets on this and spreadsheets on that. And we're all, how entrepreneurs are. We already work 15 hours a day. Don't give me more work. And in retrospect, I recognize the value that all of those spreadsheets would have brought to us understanding our balance sheet. But I just remember sitting in a board one day with this young rep from our VC, and I was very frustrated. And I looked at him and I said, something, you're nothing but a snot-nosed kid. You don't know what you're talking about because you've never built anything. And that may have been true. It may not have been true. But the one thing I do know for certain, it was the stupidest thing I ever said in my life.
Why? What was the ramification?
Well, I mean, it didn't matter how much. So I spent a lot of time analyzing and learning from that very stupid comment, but I was never able to rectify and ameliorate the situation with that young person, and it's unfortunate. But it produces a very valuable lesson that gets used over and over and over again, and that is, again, like we started this podcast, communication is so important, and figuring out how does the sort of pioneer communicate with the super smart Wharton person, and we've got to be able to do that,
Michael,
because both sides of the.
What have you found, like lessons learned, right? Like what have you found in these? I mean, you wrote a book, and it's part of the whole communication. Like, I think each of us have different relations with different people, right? Like, I'm curious, what are some of the lessons learned that you've come across? Like, what's the right modus operandi on it?
Yeah, I think that that the entrepreneur needs to recognize that while we think about this in our way, which is pioneering, we can knock any wall down. The thing we need to recognize is we cannot do this without the support of the VC. And the great thing that VCs bring to us isn't just capital. It is the doors, the keys to the doors to lots of places. And, a big part of that 70% failure is just the inability for these entrepreneurs and these VCs to get in the same room and have really good communication. And so, I hate to keep hitting on that, Eugene, but I think it just over and over and over again, it comes down to communication.
I think it's the same within co-founders, within the teams. My wife and I, we run the business together. And, just to give an example, we've had, VCs say no because we're a husband and wife, right? Which is okay. But it also tells us we don't want to work, because to us, trust is a key component of any co-founding team. And this year, we'll be married 25 years. We raised 2 great products, the 2 girls. This is our 3rd one that hopefully won't fuck up as badly as the first 2, right? But, we love building shit together. We communicate, we over communicate. And so, again, with our board, the conversation doesn't go from board meeting to board meeting, right? One of the board members, I'll do a shout out, Steve Senchens. I talk to the guy throughout the day on WhatsApp. We have a call with every Thursday, catch up. Like, it's a continuous discussion of helping along, and it's not a us or them. That's I think where a lot of entrepreneurs start getting it wrong. It's an us and a them, and it's a reporting structure. And I've been on the other side, sitting on the boards, right? And those are the worst freaking board meetings, when it's a presentation to checkbox and update and do a recording. I'm sorry, I can go for hours on this.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So number one, I love the sort of collegial approach to managing companies. Every one of my CEOs, that I'm on the companies that I'm on the board of, we have sort of weekly or bi-weekly touch points, and the line is always open. And I definitely, that's the part of the business that I enjoy the most, is the friendships that you develop with the CEO and the management team and some of the other board members. But I want to pick something apart or touch on something that Michael just mentioned, which is this comment that he made about the entrepreneur needing the venture capitalist to run their business, right? So, I mean, venture capital is a very, very expensive source of capital. It's like the most expensive source of capital on the planet. Venture debt, okay, there are certain criteria necessary to achieve venture debt, so it's a good alternative. But what does everyone think about with regards to bootstrapping, right? I mean, why is there this belief that you need venture capital to keep the lights on? Like, you could do it yourself, right?
It depends on the business, right? You can't launch rockets into space without some capital investment. But
you can. Yeah, you can.
Yes, you can.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
But one would argue it might be existing, co-founders. Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
I'll give you a really good example, because I think in 2007, one of my investors gave me some money and made me promise that if I didn't hit my revenue goals for the end of the year, then I was going to owe him the difference in my personal stock. And what that ended up doing, and this is a really good tool, Tom, if you can get the VC, your entrepreneurs to do this, because I became just absolutely determined in the most fun way, because this person who wrote the check was very close to me, but I was going to kick his butt. And so we got Teledoc to a cash flow positive situation. But the other thing we realized as we came into the October, November, December timeframe that year was that we had created an environment where there was competition. And with competition, we looked around and we said, okay, we're cash flow positive, and maybe in Teledoc's case, maybe the only time in its history it was cash flow positive was that end of the year 2007. But when we looked around and we saw all of the competitors, the Consultadocs and the Dialodocs and the Phonodocs and all the other, copycats, we realized that we were not going to be able to stay ahead of them unless we raised money. And so we had to go out to the market and secure capital. And it was a good thing. I think everybody at Teledoc who invested during that time period made 100, 200x if they sold at the right time. Yeah. So, but we couldn't have done it without capital. And as great as bootstrapping is, if we had bootstrapped, you wouldn't know the name Teledoc. You'd know one of the others.
So I want to go with Eugene. Eugene, what you just said is what I've been told by. So I'm part of this mentorship of Eric Spofford and this guy Wes Watson, over the top podcasters, whatever, But Eric Spofford is really cool. He talks about being human and telling your story of you as a person, not just your business. And it's super important because that's, we're all humans here in the end. And I just want to work with cool people that want to work with me. And you being upfront about that, that's really important. And people do invest in that. That's why Eric Spofford takes my phone call. That's why I meet with him every week, because it's about being human. He was a heroin addict on the streets with not a lot of education. I'm not a heroin addict on the streets. I just don't have all the education, did other things. And then Tom, why can't you bootstrap? Like you just said, Michael, you wouldn't know the name, but here's what's cool. I'm kind of cocky to VCs. Like, I don't need your money. You know what I mean? And I got to prove it though. I got to put my mouth where my money is. I want to be where you're at, Michael, with that sense of everybody knowing the name. So I have a product. I went to Copenhagen, just got back. I met with the world's leaders on what I'm doing. I just landed 2 banks my first week. 2 banks, a sports team, and without trying. For major cyber, this bank's going to trust me for all their major cyber because I did some. But here's the thing: I'm not going to bootstrap it. I can, but I want to be a household name as far as every vertical they're going to use it. And I'm not going to get there by myself. Like you said, the rocket. And one of my friends owns DroneUp. I listen to this guy's Tom's minds. I was like, man, I can hardly invest in his web development at Smithfield Foods, let alone invest in these drones that he's going to deliver stuff from, and I've never seen before. And look at him now; he's got a freaking full building, and Walmart signed a multi-million-dollar contract. But he had to get VC funding.
I think the timing is important as well. At least in my experience, I chose to bootstrap initially for the first 2 years, and those first 2 years were so messy. Throwing a lot of spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks, and so forth. And even since we've been venture funded now for 4 years. Even then, we're constantly we're learning micro pivots, even some major pivots along the way. But I feel like if I took on VC capital earlier in that journey, it would have been a lot harder to do that learning and kind of have that messiness and sloppy approach, which I think is just so critical in the early days. But I'm hopeful that maybe future endeavors and so forth, I can get there faster. But as I coach a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, one thing I kind of question on is is this the right time for you to raise the VC capital? Do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself on that hockey stick? Are you still trying to find the hockey stick? Are you at the precipice of hitting the curve? And why do you want that venture capital? Because they're gonna come in with pressure and requests and data and are you trying to build or are you trying to scale? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there, but I think it's something to think about, especially for entrepreneurs.
So, Dr. Gupta, that's pretty insightful. I like that you spent the time though early on to kind of figure out what, presumably, you were focused on figuring out what your business model is, who your customer is going to be, what the product is going to be. Walk me through what structurized the bootstrapping process in the early days for entrepreneurs out there. So what did you, was it just kind of throwing things at a wall and brainstorming, or were you sort of leveraging kind of a framework by which you built stuff out?
Yeah, I took a very structured approach. I built my business plan while I was at Boston Consulting Group, so I know a thing or two about strategy and operations and so forth. But for me, it was about waiting for the right tailwinds in the macro industry and so forth. And then once I wanted to start actually building, it was, you got to figure out everything, right? Figure out the tech stack, figure out how you're going to sell, how you can get that first customer, how you can get your first employee, and so forth. And I was very fortunate. I was able to convince 5 people to work basically for free for almost 2 years. They were all part-time, and I was full-time on the company for that first 2 years. But on day one, like, you've got your ideas, you've got your PowerPoints or napkin idea, whatever it is, but reality is often, I think, far from what you think it is. And you have to just, I think, constantly learn. It took me about 100 cold calls to get our first client, as an example. And, I don't know if I had taken on VC capital, if that would have been acceptable or not. We're a radically different business than we were 18 months ago, and you can only imagine where we were when I first bootstrapped what we were. But I think for me personally, the one thing that stayed the same has been my mission, which is, by living through my grandfather's experience of just how difficult it was to just navigate the right healthcare resources and caregiving resources. Our mission has always been to keep seniors healthy, happy, and at home. And how do we bring the right level of clinical technology, workflows, access to care to really drive that? And that's never changed. That grand mission has never changed in the 6 years, but the product, the focus, the execution has constantly evolved with time.
Dr. Gupta, I really commend you. One of the things is, after post-COVID and the death, I was really focused on that, care in place. It was really, how do you do, coming from a large health system, and then the CIO, his name's Mike Regan, he did Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi. He was really visionary, and he really, the connected health was really important. And the value of care in place is huge, for mortality and extended life. And because we found that the way care was being given was potentially cause mortality. Definitely COVID showed it just wasn't going to work long term. And then I want to see my mom and dad, and there's some advancements. Like, I went out to the market right after COVID to maybe invent a care in place model that's around technology, where you can measure mental health. You can measure your family's mental health or your loved one's mental health. It's maybe a platform that, through visualization, and then deliver food through Uber or whatever. So it is possible. And then the in-home healthcare, boom, immediately you had in-home healthcare, and it's an amazing, rewarding field. And there should be more investment in it, really, because I see it as a fact now. Better care in place, I think, is really needed. My future, I want to be, is when I grow up and get done with all this entrepreneur stuff, is I want to work with VCs like Tom that have a product like classification and all these specs, and I want to go out and build something that we idealize together with the VC, as opposed to being an entrepreneur. I'm the entrepreneur for that VC, for that specific tech, that what they can accomplish, and then let me visualize it and bring and create cool stuff with some other cool people that visualize it, because we've already got our thing, and it's just the fun of it all, creating.
We've been seeing quite a lot of that in digital health space. I'm just thinking about Flare Capital, their LPs are hospital systems, and you kind of spin things up. There's Redesign Health that kind of also has LPs that what's the problem I'm trying to solve? I think part of the challenge there in some of those models, and my 2 cents in it, at the end, there could be passion there. I'm not doubting all these CEOs, but ultimately they become kind of more hired guns versus maybe the problem that they're trying to solve for the, so, some of these models work, some don't. I also run a venture building group in big pharma, right? And it's, to me, it was always not about actually building anything, but more de-risking a problem statement, and then finding entrepreneurs to fill that problem statement. Because again, two different models. I think both, I don't know the yields or the results, but we've been seeing quite a lot of that in digital health, I'm sure in other industries as well.
So Eugene, that's actually part of our kind of model as well at the CVC that I'm a part of. So we're currently evaluating whether we kind of build companies from the ground up or whether we sort of identify problems and then find companies that are in the early days that are trying to solve that and then kind of bring them in-house. Any thoughts on building from the ground up or sourcing companies out in the wild?
I'm a huge fan of, if you know what the asset you need to fill or a gap you need to fill, is actually go and work with the best entrepreneurs out there. Truly, I think, I hate to say it, but in a lot of cases, large organizations, they'll and there's a lot of talented people, right? But when I still remember this question, there was always this submission of like, submit your idea, right, for something internally, large organizations. I would actually read every one of those, and I would pick up a call, and I would call that person who submitted and say, would you be willing to quit your job tomorrow to follow this through? And of course, the answer was never yes, ever, right? So I think that's really, I left my big pharma job. I joined my wife in building what we're building now, right? And to me, it resulted back in healthcare. A lot of these things start for a reason, companies, right? My wife went through breast cancer, discovered health coaching, started health coaching, built a platform for health coaches. Light bulb went off. We said, coaching is a crazy ass unregulated space. Let's figure out the data. So again, it's like there was a passion, right? There was a mantra, there was a vision, there's a mission there's not enough clinical staff. Coaches are pretty well trained. You can fill the gap. Back to, I can't imagine, even if a big company identified that as a space, where's the passion of those individuals who are still going to get, a range of a salary for building something.
So I got a
Same
quick
thing. I can go for hours on that, Tom. Happy to.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Thank you.
I got a quick gripe about healthcare. So being, and I'm not going to say any names, but being
Take a number, Matthew.
So being an entrepreneur, visionary, the chief enterprise architect for all these different things, they came to me and said, you need to sign a paper saying anything you create during your time here or think about is our intellectual property post-COVID. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, really? Like we did all this cool stuff. I spoke over the world. And now anything I think about, even if it's on my own time, you own. And it's true. I mean, healthcare's got a little off the rails as far as what they think they own as far as your intellect. You know what I mean? Like and every nonprofit is now a for-profit. I came from that because I did the data interoperability, PACS modernization, computer vision, decentralization of PACS, did all that stuff. That's cool. But they took all that technology that we created as an individual group or me on my off time, and they said, that's mine. So just I kind of have a little bit of a love-hate with healthcare and innovation and entrepreneurship at this point.
Yeah.
Well, it stifles growth.
We're kind of coming to the end. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I would love to allow, each of you or whoever would like to just send us off to maybe Mars, get that trajectory right.
I don't want to go last, so I'll go first. Maybe just a couple. I don't know how much we really deeply got into, and I'm going to actually bring it back to Michael's. I think it's the whole communication. We make our decisions on hiring and firing, especially hiring. Yes is a yes, no is a no, maybe is a no. It's got to be the right team. And again, it's a human being. You got to work and that goes for the team, but part of the team are the investors. I think, second to that, and you'll notice the theme here, we always say kind of at your coach here that people work with people, not logos, right? And then ultimately, whether these are prospects, whether these are partners, just treat people like freaking human being. Like another aspect of this, and that number 3, and I'm going to shut up after this, we also have this hashtag internally, close the loop, right? Just close the loop. People don't need to wait. We as entrepreneurs move quick, right? But I would argue that VCs and investment firms are typically startups too, right? They got to go raise. They got to close the loop with their LPs. So please don't forget to close the loop with the startups that, you get treated or you get treated upstream. Same thing. So those are my three to send us off.
I can jump in. I think life is a journey. Who you spend it with is so important. Pick the right folks. From your partner in life to your partners in a startup. I'm talking about employees, co-founders, and then obviously your investors. I think that's just so critical. I know a lot of folks talk about the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, and I haven't felt that personally, which I think is just because of the people I've surrounded myself with. If I can give a quick personal plug, in terms of going to the Mars, Tembo Health is we're on the path. We're actually launching a big fundraise next week. If anyone's interested, and if you have any family members or loved ones or connections that are dealing with dementia, you can literally go to our website right now, www.tembo.health, and you can sign up for an appointment to see one of our clinicians the very next business day. And we're here to support everyone. Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, Dr. Gupta, dementia, huge unmet need, really noble work. Look forward to kind of following you. I think I don't have really much novel stuff to add to the comments that I've made, other than, if you're sort of an entrepreneur, I think option value is key, and find that investor who's gonna, pick up the phone when you call them, spend the time, ask about your personal life, and check in on you as a person, not only as how the business is doing and how are the KPIs. I think if there's anything I learned from this conversation is, look, I think good people need to find good people and keep rocking and rolling, right? So there's always going to be a-holes. I'm a big believer in a-holes are just misunderstood, but generally speaking, I think if you're a great entrepreneur, you have options. So this has been a great conversation.
I think the early stage entrepreneurs, or let me rephrase this, the entrepreneurs that are on company number 1 or number 2, they're going to go to Tom because they want money. And I think, Tom, the one thing that you said that my guess is part of your philosophy is, can you bootstrap this? And so if we have entrepreneurs who really want to bootstrap it, but they're in a situation where if they're going to do the Matthew change the world kind of thing, or Dr. Gupta change the world kind of thing, they've got to have capital. And so if we can mix all these together, and then for those young entrepreneurs, show them that the VC isn't just about money. When you really get it figured out, you can talk to VCs, you can get a term sheet, but the valuable term sheets aren't the ones that are just going to write you a check on the best terms. The most valuable ones are the ones who have the keys to all the doors you need and are willing to give you those keys once you have a deal. And I think that's the big thing that the entrepreneurs need to know. And to you guys, Tom, we're your feedstock. Treat us well. In the liquidity event, we want to make money too.
Yeah. Hey, and wow, Michael, you hit it on the head. You really have. And I'm really excited with this group. Tom, I mentioned before in another podcast, this group was really cool, and I got a lot of feedback. Like, I got some answers that I was asking myself this morning, and I don't have all the answers, and that's the cool part. And I need others like you guys around me. Michael, you nailed it, and it's the human factor of Eugene, and Dr. Gupta, the vision and the passion. I'm looking for that guy that's willing to grow it with me. I can do it myself, but I want somebody that's going to open a few more doors. I can open a lot of doors. I'm really serious. Lots more than, I was able to like pre-COVID, if COVID didn't happen, Michael Dell, I was sitting in his Bugatti at his house with his, after speaking the keynote at hymns to pitch him on an idea. So got great friends, but I want that people I want to eat dinner with, not just get money from. You know what I mean? I really do.
Exactly.
I really do. It's about being happy today. I learned this from a really cool guy that's created Linux. he's one of my mentors. He said, "Do you want to be happy or do you want to be right?"
Yeah.
And I worked on that for this last 10 months of getting to happy, and weighing out everything. Do I want to be happy or I want to be right? And then the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So those are the two principles I've been living by in this last 10 months. And it's given me great success and made some amazing friendships throughout that mindset. Thanks.
Well, this has been awesome. Really appreciate having all of you on today. Planetary Health First, Mars Next. What makes a good or bad venture capitalist? Until next time, friends.